Welcome back. Welcome back to us as well. It's been quite a while. My mom and I are extremely excited about season 6. My name's James Johnson, and this is my lovely mother, LaDonna.
Hello, folks. So glad to be back, and happy St. Patrick's Day a little bit early.
As you can tell, she dressed up a little bit, and for Easter, she got me a little gift, which I can't believe they actually released it. It's actually called the Night's King, and if you can see, it's got the cracks on its head and the lips, and it's got the whole deal. It's pretty awesome. So if you haven't watched the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones and you haven't read the first 5 books of the Song of Ice and Fire series, we have, and we'll be talking about them and about spoilers and theories. So in this particular video, my mom's going to talk about Ian McShane. So, Mom, why don't you take it away?
Okay, honey. Want to make sure I've got the right screens up here. Okay, I think we're good. Yes. I think, James, if you want to title this Game of Thrones Season 6 and then say the title, that's the way most people are researching it these days, okay? All right, we're going to talk about Ian McShane, who is going to be playing a character that he, in an interview, said is going to bring somebody back from the dead, and who he might be talking about. For show watchers only, you may be scratching your head. For book readers, we have pretty much thought about this for quite a while, and we're pretty sure who it is. I think what I'm going to do is tell you, first of all, that way back when, before they cast Season 6, they had a casting call-out sheet, and one of the characters was listed as needing somebody who was older and had a military-like presence, that he was going to be playing someone who was a former military leader, and that it was not a very long or big role. And I think most of us immediately thought of either Randall Tarley or possibly Elder Brother. And he's pretty much given it away by saying he's going to bring somebody back from the dead. That is Elder Brother. So if you have not read the books and you do not want any spoilers, you need to click away right now. But if you want to know, Ian McShane has been an actor for quite a while. I'm going to show you some pictures of him. I happen to have been in love with him when I was a younger girl. Very handsome man, very imposing, great actor. But in his interview, I think it was an Australian kind of Good Morning America show, he said that he was going to be playing an older pacifist who was going to be bringing someone back from the dead. And he joked that it might be Jon Snow and it might be somebody else, but it's probably the latter. Well, that person is Sandor Clegane. Now, in the books, Brienne ends up meeting up with someone called Septon Maribald. And this is a traveling preacher who ends up taking Brienne kind of for refuge across the marshes at Salt Pans. And you saw where Salt Pans was because that's where Arya got on the boat to go to Bravos. When she presented her coin, there were people in the background that were shoveling mass quantities of sand. If you go across the marshes of Salt Pans, which is very treacherous...
You said sand. Excuse me, I'm sick. You said sand. You meant salt.
Sorry, I meant salt. Thank you very much. But if you travel... My dog's choking. Excuse me. If you travel across the Salt Pan marshes, you end up on a place called Quiet Isle. And that is where Pod, Brienne, and Septon Maribald go, and he introduces her to Elder Brother. Elder Brother is the head monk of a monastic kind of cloistered society in an island across from Westeros, across from the Salt Pans area. Elder Brother ends up talking to Brienne quite a while, and when he and Septon Maribald are walking through the aisle, they pass a hooded, very tall figure with a limp who is digging graves. This is the grave digger theory. And that person with a limp, who has obviously injured his leg previously, throws dirt so far that it ends up being thrown at Brienne's feet. And Septon Maribald even scolds him and says, "You need to be careful where you're throwing that dirt." About that time, the gravedigger puts a shovel down and leans down and pets a dog. There's your Hound, okay? Now, he's not revealed to be the Hound in the book, but that's who it is. I don't think the resurrection is a resurrection like we're going to see with certain other characters, but rather that Sept and Maribald found him and took him to Quiet Isle. An elder brother, who they say has miraculous healing powers, has nursed the Hound back to health. Now, I'm going to show you some pictures, and hopefully it's going to work, James. We'll see. James, tell me if this works, honey. Can you see this?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, you didn't talk.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, this picture right here, folks, is not Quiet Isle, but I'm just showing you a representation of having to get across some treacherous marshes to get to it. As a matter of fact, if you don't travel to Quiet Isle in a certain way, in a certain winding path, and also if you do it at certain times of the day, you can either be caught up in quicksand or be washed away by the tide. So it's very, very dangerous in how to get there, which makes it, again, kind of a refuge away from the wars of Westeros. Now, the next picture is Ian McShane as a young man. He was in a British long-running series called Lovejoy. I believe he's also been on American Horror Story, and he certainly was in Deadwood. He's quite a presence. This is him older. This man is, let's see, I think he's about 71 now. And then he's not bearded in this picture, but in the next one, I think that's probably pretty much what he's going to be looking at like in the show. At any rate, this is the man who is going to bring the Hound and nurse him back to health. And I've done a collage here to show you just a representation of the Hound, Sept and Maribald, combined with Elder Brother. They're just combining some characters to make it tighter, both visually and narratively for the show. And then underneath it is an artist representation of Podrick, Sept and Maribald, and Brienne walking by the gravedigger. And you can see that he's hooded. And actually, in the books, he's not only hooded and in a monk-like outfit, but he has a cowl that covers his face so that you can only see his eyes. So no one will know that he has been burned as a child. And they've taken a vow of silence. As a matter of fact, Elder Brother, for many years, I think it was 10 years, kept a vow of silence until he became the leader. But they're pacifists. They're military men who have put down their arms and won a life of peace. We'll see how long that lasts. The next picture, though, for those who doubt it, here's some foreshadowing of what the Hound's going to look like. That's the Hound in the wagon when they go to the twins right before the Red Wedding. This is about the time Arya jumps off and he has to go find her. Now, okay, I'm going to try to go back to the Google Hangouts. James, let's see if I can get this thing to... Am I back on now? I can't hear you.
Sorry. We'll deal with those issues later. Yeah.
Okay, so that's Ian McShane. Now, he gave a big spoiler away on the show, and then later on he said, I'm not going to apologize to her. I didn't give anything away. Game of Thrones is just about tits and dragons. And I don't think that's all it's about, but he doesn't know anything about the show. He didn't know he was giving anything away. But
yeah, if I can expand upon that, the story you told at the beginning was a little, and we'll put a link in the description of what he said, but he says that he's a member of a group of pacifists. He calls them hippies. He says that, and he also calls them a cult, but he says it in kind of a it's not really bad connotations with it. He's just using broad sweeping terms. But he says, and I'll be responsible for bringing back a much-loved character. The people that are interviewing him say, well, that can only be Jon or the Hound. And he said, I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but it's not the latter, and it's most likely the first, which was the Hound. So he pretty much gave it away. And later on, when asked, when he was questioned as to whether he felt guilty that he had done it, he said, how do you feel about the fact that you've spoiled something for people? And he says they can get over it. It's tits and dragons.
I don't remember him saying the Hound. He said it's Jon or some other character. But
they said well, that's either the Hound or John. And he said, well, I'm not going to tell you, but it's not the second one, and it's probably the first.
But he was referring to the Hound, not John. You reversed it.
Her.
Yeah. So at any rate, it's interesting, but it's going to be really cool to see him play against the Hound because they both have an imposing presence. I wanted to read just a couple of things. Book readers, you know what I'm going to be talking about, and I don't mean to bore you, but very briefly. Here is where Septon Maribald, this is in A Feast for Crows, and it is in Brienne 5, I believe is a chapter, but which would be the 5th Brienne chapter. That's the way that you reference this in the book, since they're written by first-person perspective for certain characters. Septon Maribald says, "The 7 are always with me, and I have my faithful servant and dog with a capital D." "Does your dog have a name?" asked Podrick Payne. "He must," said Maribald, "but he's not my dog, not him." The dog barked and wagged his tail. He was a huge, shaggy creature, 10 stone of dog at least, but friendly. Now, I think that's your foreshadowing of the Hound here, because the dog barked. Yeah, he's got a bark, but he also wagged his tail, which was kind of similar to the way he treated Sansa. Had a horrible bark, but he also was friendly to her in terms of trying to save her and teach her. He's a huge, shaggy creature. Well, so is the Hound. And he was 10 stone of dog at least, so a big guy, but friendly. That's on paperback 531. Moving on very quickly, if you go to page 533, and James, I'm going to share something up here in just a second. If you would tell me if you can see it, please. Septon Maribald gives an absolutely magnificent soliloquy with Brienne. I know that's soliloquy alone, but still, it's a lovely speech to Brienne. It's called the Broken Man Speech, and I'm going to share a link for you so that you can go to it, because it's so lovely. If you have not read the books, I would highly suggest that you do it. It's right here, A Feast for Crows, Brienne, 5th chapter, Broken Man's Speech, and he talks about...
I'm going to read it in a minute.
Okay, you can, but I'm also going to give this link, James.
I've got it.
Of this one, there is a person, I think it sounds like Jamie, but I don't think it is. There is a YouTube one if you want to go over it in more detail. But James, if you want to read it, have you got it?
Yeah, you want me to read it now?
Yeah, do it. It's not very long, and it's a lovely, lovely speech.
All right. You got to get off the screen share.
I'm trying right now. There you go.
All right. So it's Podrick, Brienne, and a couple of other people, and Brienne says, or excuse me, Podrick says, "Is a broken man an outlaw?" "More or less," Brienne answered. Septon Maribald disagreed. "More less than more. There are many sorts of outlaws, just as there are many sorts of birds. A sandpiper and a sea eagle both have wings, but they are not the same. The singers love to sing of good men forced to go outside the law to fight some wicked lord. But most outlaws are more like this ravening hound than they are the lightning lord. They are evil men driven by greed, soured by malice, despising the gods and caring only for themselves. Broken men are more deserving of our pity, though they may be just as dangerous. Almost all are common-born, simple folk who had never been more than a mile from the house where they were born until the day some lord came round to take them off to war. Poorly shod and poorly clad, they marched away beneath his banners, ofttimes with no better arms than a sickle, or a sharpened hoe, or a maul they made themselves by lashing a stone to a stick with strips of hide. Brothers marched with brothers, sons with fathers, friends with friends. They've heard the songs and stories, so that they go off with eager hearts, dreaming of the wonders they will see, of the wealth and glory they will win. War seems a fine adventure, the greatest most of them will ever know. Then they get a taste of battle. For some, that one taste is enough to break them. Others go on for years, until they lose count of all the battles they have fought in. But even a man who has survived 100 fights can break in his 101st. Brothers watch their brothers die. Fathers lose their sons. Friends see their friends trying to hold their entrails in after they've been gutted by an axe. They see the Lord who led them there cut down, and some other Lord shouts that they are his now. They take a wound, and when that's still half healed, they take another. There is never enough to eat. Their shoes fall to pieces from the marching. Their clothes are torn and rotting, and half of them are shitting in their breeches from drinking bad water. If they want new boots, or a warmer cloak, or maybe a rusted iron half-helm, they need to take them from a corpse. And before long they are stealing from the living, too, from the small folk whose lands they're fighting in, men very like the men they used to be. They slaughter their sheep and steal their chickens, and from there it's just a short step to carrying off their daughters, too. And one day they look around and realize all their friends and kin are gone, that they are fighting beside strangers beneath a banner they hardly recognize. They don't know where they are or how to get back home, and the Lord they're fighting for does not know their names, yet here he comes, shouting for them to form up, to make a line with their spears and scythes and sharpened hoes, to stand their ground, and the knights come on them. Faceless men clad all in steel, and the iron thunder of their charge seems to fill the world. And the man breaks. He turns and runs, or crawls off afterward over the corpses of the slain, or steals away in the black of night, and he finds some place to hide. All thought of home is gone by then, and kings and lords and gods mean less to him than a haunch of spoiled meat that would let him live another day, or a skin of bad wine that might drown his fear for a few hours. The broken man lives from day to day, from meal to meal, more beast than man. Lady Brienne is not wrong. In times like these, the travelers must beware of broken men and fear them. But he should pity them as well. When Maribel was finished, a profound silence fell upon their little band. Brienne could hear the wind rustling through a clump of pussy willows, and farther off the faint cry of a loon. She could hear Dog panting slowly as he loped along beside the Septon and his donkey, tongue lolling from his mouth. The quiet stretched and stretched until finally she said, "How old were you when they marched you off to war?" "Why, no older than your boy," Maribald replied. "Too young for such, in truth, but my brothers were all going, and I would not be left behind. William said I could be his squire, though Will was no knight, only a pot boy armed with a kitchen knife he'd stolen from the inn. He died upon the stepstones, and never struck a blow. It was fever did for him, and for my brother Robin. Owen died from a mace that split his head apart, and his friend John Pox was hanged for rape." "The War of the Ninepenny Kings?" asked Hyle Hunt. "So they called it, though I never saw a king, nor earned a penny. It was a war, though, that it was."
Boy, that's so filled with foreshadowing and past, it's unbelievable. Talking about a young boy ripped away from his home, following his brother. Guess what? Here's the guy. Who did he leave his home as a child to follow his brother to King's Landing? He's a broken man. He broke on the Battle of Blackwater when the fire caused his post-traumatic stress disorder to go crazy. He said F you to the king after seeing all the atrocities committed. And he also did some things on the road that he wasn't real proud of, but he is a friendly dog as well. Also, the foreshadowing of losing a lot of your kin and having to fight at the end with strangers, I think is a foreshadowing to the great battle to come. It's a lovely, lovely, heartfelt, and well-written couple of pages by Martin. It also talks about burning in that. I wanted to read a couple more things, if I might, James, just real quickly.
Yeah.
This is Septon, Maribald, Podrick, Brienne, and Hyle Hunt is irrelevant. He's not in the show, but he's there. They passed a dozen brothers of the order on their way up, cowled men in dun and brown, who gave them curious looks as they went by, but spoke no word of greeting. One was leading a pair of milk cows toward a low barn roofed in sod. Another worked a butter churn. On the upper slopes, they saw 3 boys driving sheep, and higher still they passed a lich yard where a brother bigger than Brienne was struggling to dig a grave. From the way he moved, it was plain to see that he was lame. As he flung a spadeful of the stony soil over one shoulder, some chanced to spatter against their feet. "Be more watchful there," chided Brother Narbert. "Septon Maribald might have gotten a mouthful of dirt." The gravedigger lowered his head. When Dog went to sniff him, he dropped his spade and scratched his ear. "A novice," explained Brother Narbert. Well, that's the Hound, folks. A little bit later, it says, "Many of our brothers came here to escape the horrors of the world, not to dwell upon them. Brother Clement was not the only wounded man amongst us. Some wounds do not show." It also says a description of the elder brother, if I might. The elder brother was not what Brienne had expected. He could hardly be called elder for a start, whereas the brothers weeding in the garden had had the stooped shoulders and bent backs of old men. He stood straight and tall, and moved with the vigor of a man in the prime of his years. Nor did he have the gentle, kindly face she expected of a healer. His head was large and square, his eyes shrewd, his nose veined and red. Though he wore a tonsure, his scalp was as stubby as his heavy jaw. "He looks more like a man made to break bones than to heal one," thought the Maid of Tarth. And I think, if I can say one other thing, a little while later, elder brother says, "There's too many corpses these days. Our gravedigger knows no rest." A few pages later, it says, "There were grown men as well, amongst them the big gravedigger they had encountered on the hill, who walked with the awkward lurching gait of one half crippled." And the last paragraph I want to read you is, it says, "You're chasing the wrong wolf, my lady. Eddard Stark had 2 daughters. It was the other one that Sandor Clegane made off with, the younger one." "Arya Stark," Brienne stared, open-mouthed, astonished. "You know this? Lady Sansa's sister is alive?" "Then," said the elder brother, "now I do not know. But I am certain that the child was with Sandor Clegane at the inn beside the crossroads. I'm certain they were on their way to Salt Pans. How did he die? By the sword, as he has lived. You know this for a certainty? I buried him myself. The man who raped and killed at Salt Pans was not Sandor Clegane, though he may be as dangerous. The Riverlands are full of such scavengers. I will not call them wolves. Wolves are nobler than that, and so are dogs, I think." Now, the last thing I will say is that a couple pages later, Brienne says, "You sound as if you pity him." "I did, and you would have pitied him as well if you had seen him at the end. I came upon him by the trident, drawn by his cries of pain. He begged me for the gift of mercy, but I am sworn not to kill again. Instead, I bathed his fevered brow with river water and gave him wine to drink and a poultice for his wound. But my efforts were too little and too late. The Hound died there, in my arms. You may have seen a big black stallion in our stables. That was his war horse, Stranger, a blasphemous name. We prefer to call him Driftwood, as he was found beside the river. I fear he has his former master's nature." So, Stranger somehow makes his way across the dangerous Salt Pans. Why would they bring a dangerous horse back there? Because Sandor was riding it. Okay. Anything else, darling? Can't hear you.
Yeah, I want to couple things. Yeah, I got it.
You sound okay here.
No, it's definitely okay. Will you put your headphones on?
Yes.
Actually, I'll mute you. Okay, good. All right, so a couple of things. I wanted to add, and I don't think she straight up said it, that Maribald and Elder Brother are um, combined, in my opinion, to create this character. That we have to get some of the broken man speech, in my opinion, and at the same time, he's also playing the character of Elder Brother, having recouped the Hound. I did want to make some random comment that I rewatched Lord of the Rings recently, and I realized that I believe the Hound, that he's a lot of influences, I'm sure, created every single one of these characters, but the Hound, in Lord of the Rings, there are two brothers, the elder of which is treated as if he's better, and the younger of which is treated as if he's less, and his loyalty ends up being the thing that almost kills him, because when his father tells him to go do something he knows is stupid, he does it just to show his father that he's willing to die to be his father's thrall, basically. And that's Faramir. And Faramir, there's this scene I learned recently called Imperium, and it means a kingdom within a king. It's the idea of a kingdom within a kingdom, and it was the way that Europeans, particularly the British, made fun of the idea of federalism. The idea that the state government is its own kingdom, but it is within a bigger kingdom. Well, in Lord of the Rings, Rohan, which is where Eowyn is from, is a kingdom within the kingdom of Gondor, which is I forget his title, but the guy that's in charge of it, and his sons are, the guy who's supposed to be in charge of it is Aragorn's lineage, but the guy that's in charge of it, his two sons are Boromir and Faramir. Faramir and Eowyn end up getting married. And what is the kingdom within a kingdom in Game of Thrones that they make a point of? That's the King in the North, the King of the North, not King of the North, King in the North, because it's a kingdom within a kingdom. Faramir ends up with Eowyn. Eowyn is the princess, it could be said, of the kingdom within a kingdom. That's the Hound. That's Sansa. The difference is that Sansa is going to be a queen, which is there's a lot of differences, but one of the differences is Sansa is going to end up being a queen. I did want to add that. Anyway, we're really fucking excited.
Can I add a couple more things in there?
Yeah.
If you watch the extended version of the Lord of the Rings movie, Faramir and Eowyn do get together. They left that kind of open in the regular version, but they definitely get together in there. She shows some love interest in Strider, Aragorn, but she ultimately ends up with Faramir. That's a really, really good point. I did want to point out that James and I have done a video on the Hound a few years back that talked about what it meant when he and Arya were there as he was dying, because the show hadn't happened yet, and it really left it open as to Arya's intentions when she left him there to die with a fever, which was also referenced, James, in that Broken Man speech. At that time, in the books, it was a little different than the show. There wasn't really money involved that she left. She just freaking left him there. And then later on in the show, we get to see, thank goodness, it clarified when Jack and Hagar beats her saying, "You're lying, you're lying, you're lying." And then she says, "I hated the Hound," and he keeps hitting her. She didn't hate him. She was conflicted. She really cares about him. So we're going to see that later. I don't think she's going to put a sword through his eye. But I do think he's destined for Sansa. And if you doubt me, go read any of Sansa's chapters at the Vale, because in those she dreams of him getting in bed with her, and she dreams of having puppies in her lap. Well, he's the Hound, and she's a wolf. So we're really excited. We've been chomping at the bit all year, haven't we, James?
We have. I am of the opinion that Arya, only because the show foreshadowed it, Arya is going to stab the Hound in the face, but it's not going to be Arya. If you haven't seen the previous videos, long story short, Arya is going to end up getting raped by Roose Bolton, have the child, and get impregnated by him. But when she is raped, she'll leave her body and end up entering Nymeria, and will have a second life when her soul, and whatever you want to call it, leaves Nymeria and enters another female. So, and they'll wake from a coma, which we have had comas before, and that'll be like Sleeping Beauty, and it'll be Gendry who ends up reawakening that. But when the Night's Queen is killed, and then the Night's King is killed, the only thing the Night's King is going to care about is that child, and will inhabit Arya's catatonic pregnant body and become so. The girl who is playing Arya, Maisie Williams, is it Maisie Williams?
Yes.
Will be playing the final villain, in my opinion. That's really fucking out there, I'm aware.
I don't agree with all of that. I think she is destined to be with Gendry. She told him before, I could be your family. And I still believe he is Cersei and Robert Baratheon's trueborn first child, and if you doubt me, go take a look at our video that we did on it. We gave you textual evidence. It's still open, and I know that. There's no point in arguing. It's just a theory, but the textual evidence is there. I don't think she got rid of him. Not killed him. I think he's still alive as her child. But at any rate, folks, we can't wait to see you soon, and it's just around the corner.
Just around the freaking corner. Thank y'all for watching. I love you, Mama.
Love you too, darling. Night.
Night.